Hi knitters, welcome to episode 187 of the Knitty McPurly podcast. I am your host, Devin Ventry. You can find me at KnittyMcPurly.com. I'm Knitty McPurly on Instagram, and if you want to email me, I'm Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com. Hello, how are you? I hope you've had a great week. It's been kind of a consequential week. A lot of stuff has happened this week. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I hope you are all doing well. I hope you haven't altered your gauge. Sometimes when there's a lot going on in the world, we just knit really tight. Try to calm down and not knit really tight, even though the world is crazy. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. Saturday afternoon, last week we had Maggie's baby shower and it was so great. Everyone was just, you know how people are, how non-knitters are when you hand over a bunch of knitted gifts. They act like, you're a magician and it's pure magic and they don't know how you did it, and it was just amazing. I also was wearing the sweater that I had on for the podcast last week, the Jupiter crop that I knit, and people were super impressed. It's super easy to impress people with knitting, isn't it? I love that. Okay, progress and shop news. So the newest thing in the shop, it's been in the works forever, folks. I have wanted a color card of the Knitty McPurly colors forever, ever. And, partly I needed to have all the colors that I wanted to do. I needed to have them, all of them, so that I can put them on the color card. And second of all, I've had to figure out how to do it. There's a lot of ways to make one, and I wanted it to be cute and professional and pretty and functional. And so I came up with this. So this is the back, and these are just pictures of skeins of my yarn that's beautiful. And then here we've got Knitty McPurly Yarn Co. color card. It's got the website. And then sorry, it's so bright in here. Then it's got each color next to its color name. Now, these are superwash colors. Oh, I meant to bring up a Fiji fingering. Hold on, let me go grab one. So these are the superwash versions of the color. For example, Frankfurt Fingering, Dubrovnik DK, and Warsaw Worsted, Berlin Bulky. They're all going to come out to this color. However, there are some bases that take the dye differently. And I had a couple of questions this week about Fiji fingering. And you have to understand that Fiji is half merino and half Pima cotton. So it takes the dye very differently. So I brought up a few examples to show you just so that you are clear on it. So here is Fontaine in Frankfurt Fingering. Here it is in Fiji Fingering. It's the exact same dye, but it looks different on this base. So when you order Fiji Fingering, the half cotton one, just know that it's kind of a weathered, washed out look, such as in my Jupiter crop. It looks like this. Gosh, I keep bumping the table, sorry. It looks like this. It's just not as vibrant as the colors are in other bases. But I love it. It's just kind of a distressed, weathered, heathery kind of color. So here is Dubrovnik DK in Valentine, and here it is in Fiji. It's much, much lighter. It's always gonna look like this on this base. It's just the way the fiber takes the dye. It's not true of all half wool, half cotton yarn. It's just the process that I use. I get this more muted color. I like it like this. I think it's great. So if you get it and you're like, wait a minute, that's not the color that I ordered. It is, it just looks different on a different base. So here is Roxette. This is Dubrovnik DK, and there it is in Fiji. See how it's just much lighter. So that's what it is. But if you want to go grab one of these color cards, you can. Oh, aren't they so great? Don't balk at the price because Gigi tied all of these by hand, okay? And there are 18 colors. 18. There are 18 colors there. Isn't it great? Oh my gosh, I love it so much. So if you want one of those, if you are a regular consumer of Knitty McPurly yarn and you want to have a card in your arsenal of yarn so you know what the colors look like and you can kind of compare them, like if you wanted to compare, and it's not going to be easy to see on the screen, it's better in person, but if you wanted to compare Dusty and Bougie, you know, these are both kind of a pale pink, but they're not the same. They're very different. So there's that. That's in the shop. You guys, it's been forever. It's been like 2 years in the making. I can't even tell you how many times I ordered the card and then I just didn't use it because I didn't like it or it wasn't what I wanted. The fact that these are so incredibly gorgeous and perfect, I'm just so happy with them. Okay. Anyway, this week I have been knitting with August color of the month. So I'm gonna put that out next weekend, which is a little bit early for August. It's like next weekend is the 27th. I'll put August color of the month up for then, and I will show you what I've been working on. Gigi and I have both knit socks with an August sock set. So it's pretty great. Like that doesn't usually happen where I can show you the finished, how it looks knit up before you buy. So that is coming. So I don't really have any personal knitting to share. I have a few whips, but I really haven't done anything on them. But we'll go ahead and move on to the topic of the week because I want to talk to you about making the sweater that you want to make. If you have a garment in your closet that you love, it fits you perfectly, you love the shape of it, it's the right length, it fits your arms and your midsection and just everything just right, and it's your go-to shape, you can knit that. It's not a first project. You have to, you know, be like a seasoned sweater knitter. You have to knit enough things with enough different types of construction before you can really attack, how can I construct this sweater? Construction is kind of a different question, but I want to talk to you about how you can get a stitch count for all of the parts that you want to make. So let's go to this picture. This is the sweater, or it's actually a sweatshirt. It's a college sweatshirt from my daughter's school where she's going this fall, and I just love the way it fits, and I really want to knit it. I talked a little bit about it last week. And so I laid it out, and I took these measurements. So you can see exactly what the final measurement is going to be, because I would like it to match this. So that's step one. Step two is to take the yarn that you want to use. I chose Devin AT DK because DK is just the best, isn't it? Like, it doesn't take as long to make as a fingering weight sweater, but it's not as heavy as a worsted weight. And I just personally think that my Devin AT DK is the best. It's got like you can see the twist, and it's just so great. I just love it. So anyway, I'm using Devin AT DK, and I decided to use a US 4. Sometimes I use a 5, but I started out with a 5 and I didn't like the fabric that I got. It was a little too open. I'm a loose knitter. Rude, right? So rude. I'm a loose knitter, and so I tend to go down a size of needle compared to other knitters. And I knit this gauge swatch. So I'm just, even though you probably know how to measure your gauge, I'm just gonna put a very brief video in here talking about how I got the gauge for my swatch. All right, I'm just going to show you really quickly how to measure gauge. You might already know this, but just in case you don't. I like to use a wooden ruler. This is my favorite thing. I also have this cool tool, which I can show you how to use in just a second. So when you are looking at knitting, you notice that this leg and this leg are one stitch. Okay, so you're going to count that whole V as one stitch. So I'm going to put my line here, which is the beginning of my inch, at the edge of one stitch. and I'm going to count up how many stitches I have in 4 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 exactly right there, 4 inches. So I've measured here. I'm going to measure in a couple of other places. Oh, and here I'll show you how to use this thing. This is from Acreworks. I don't know if these are still available. I've had it for a few years. But the nice thing about it is that you can see how many stitches you have, how many rows you have in 4 inches or how many stitches. So let's count it using this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Sometimes I have to stop to blink. That's when I'll lose my spot. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Exactly 24. And just for kicks, we will measure up here. See what we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I'm going to call this is like 23 3/4 right there. There's like 3/4 of a stitch. But either way, that is 24 stitches over 4 inches. So 4 inches is approximately 24 stitches. And that's why you measure it 3 times, so that you can find about what the gauge is, approximately averaged over 3 measurements. So that's easy, right? That's just 6 stitches equals 1 inch. Don't even have to deal with fractions. It's great when that works out. So back to our picture. I decided that the easiest way to knit this sweater would be bottom up. It has a split hem, so I'm just going to cast on either the front or the back first. They're going to be the same. And you can see that across the bottom band of the sweater, it's 22 inches across. So in order to figure out my cast on, I just multiply 22 times 6, and that is 132. So that's my cast on. Now I am going to, am I going to go down a needle size? I probably will go down a needle size just for the ribbing, just because that's typically what's done so that the ribbing matches the gauge of the stockinette. So I will cast on with US 3, and I'll do that this week, and I'll show it to you, and I'll work through this process. It'll take me a couple of weeks, but I'll work through this process so that you can kind of see how you can do it too. Now, this sweater that I have chosen is super simple. You can tell in my drawing that the sleeve opening does have shaping, but I'm not going to make it with shaping. I'm gonna leave the shaping off. I think what I'll probably do is knit the front flat and knit the back flat. I have the option of working it in the round right as soon as I'm done with the split hem. I've got, let's see, about 4.25 inches where I could work it in the round. Maybe I will, we'll see. I think it might be a little easier just to work it flat in terms of carrying it around. But I'm going to cast this on this week, and I really thought about what color I wanted, and I ultimately decided on Valentine because red is a good color for me, and I almost never wear it. I own 0 red sweaters. So I thought it would be a great Christmas sweater, be a great Pentecost sweater, Valentine's Day. Be nice to have a red sweater. And I love this shape. I think it's going to be great. So this is day 1, week 1 of this process. But follow along with me. If you missed last week's podcast, go back and you can see the sweatshirt that I'm using. And we're going to be working through this. I don't know how long it'll take, maybe 6 weeks. But if you watch the podcast, you'll see it happen and unfold in front of your very eyes. All right, moving right along to the comments section. Okay, Elle Bilkey asked this question, and this is a hard question. She says, when you make a downloadable PDF on substituting yarn, can you include information on how to figure out more or less, how much more or less yarn you would need? Okay, This is a difficult question because you have to have, well, let's see. If you have a swatch and you have the finished measurements, you could do it. Yes, I can do that. My original thought was you have to have the finished measurements of the sweater. But what we talked about before was using an existing pattern and just knitting a different size to accommodate your needle choice. And so you could just use the measurements in the schematic for that size. So yes, Lori, when I first read that, I thought, I don't think I could do that, but I'm an extrovert and extroverts think out loud. Okay. Linda Spencer had a great comment. She says, I am determined to become a sock knitter. I have lots of sock yarn because it's just so appealing, but I have yet to complete a pair. I've tried magic loop, 2 at a time, 9-inch circulars, and just haven't fallen in love. I'm on the hunt for a set of signature needle arts as I hear great things about them, but since they're discontinued, I've not had success. Does anyone have experience with flexible needles? My motivation is that we're taking a trip to Europe next year and we'll pack in a carry-on only. Wow. Not knitting on the plane or during downtime is not an option, so socks seem to be the most concise project, and I can always buy another skein if I get a pair done. DPNs concern me, as I'm sure I'd drop one and send it down the plane, never to be seen again. I'm open to suggestions and I'm eager to join the sock club and get some practice before the trip. Suggestions. So she got a few suggestions in the comments. Simple Life at Home says, hey Linda, I learned to knit socks on DPNs and I do recommend that to others simply because it felt like an easier way to learn the construction of the sock rather than the 9-inch circulars or magic loop. However, now that I have knit socks using those other methods, I prefer the 9-inch. I recommend trying the Crazy Sock Lady's tutorials for knitting socks. She has videos on the different methods here on YouTube, and once you understand the basics, you can choose which method you prefer. That is a great suggestion. Katie B had another great suggestion. She said, I didn't like Magic Loop when I first tried it, but then I followed Summer Lee's I'm So Basic sock free pattern and watched the videos that go with it to knit my first pair of socks, and now am firmly in the Magic Loop sock knitting camp. The videos are so important because she explains things so helpfully and makes it so easy. Those are great suggestions because those two ladies, Summer Lee and the Crazy Sock Lady, whose name I can't remember, they are sock experts, sock-spurts, if you will. They know what our good suggestions are. Now, that said, as someone who has knit a lot of socks and I have designed a bunch of socks, I'll give you my personal opinion. However, put it underneath, put it below those other two ladies, as I am not the sock experts that they are. My favorite way to knit socks, and if you've been here a long time, you know what I'm gonna say, is 3 16-inch circular needles. Now, wait a minute, Devin, why 3? Why not just use one really long one? Okay, several reasons. I am a luxury sock knitter. I want to have absolutely everything that I could possibly need, and I want it to be as easy as possible. So let's say I'm knitting a sock and it's got 64 stitches, we'll say. I've got 16 inches. It's nice and long. I'm not gonna lose it. It's easier to find if I drop it. I have 9-inch. I have the flexi flips. I have the floop-de-doos, whatever they are, the ones that are short. I have all those. The 16-inch is short enough that you don't get it caught on things like you do with a long needle. The worst is with a long needle when you get that loop caught on something and it pulls out of your stitches, and it's fine. We can rethread the stitches. It's not the end of the world, but it's nice when that doesn't happen. So 16 inches is short enough so it doesn't get caught on things, but long enough so that you can use it when you've got all the stitches, when you're doing the instep. It's easy to find if you drop it, and it's just the best in my opinion. So if you have your 32 on one needle and your 32 on the other needle, then you knit with the third needle. Is it overkill? Yes. But if you don't know by now that I love overkill, then you don't know me at all. If you were to drop one, you could always do it with 2 and just knit with the other end. You could totally do that. You could use one longer needle. Yes, you could use one 9-inch, but, and it's also more expensive because you got to buy 3 16-inch needles, which is like 30 bucks. But if you always knit with the same size, then we're just talking about 3 needles, 3 US 1 for me. I always use a US 1, 3 US 1 needles. Now that said, the sock that I just finished, I used double points for because I couldn't find my 16-inch needles. Even though they're supposed to be organized, they're probably in a project somewhere. I think I know where they are as we talk about it. But anyway, definitely look into these other ladies first, but if you want to, try 3 16-inch circulars. Signature needle arts are, in my humble opinion, again, I've said this before, they're great, they're fine, they're wonderful, but there's lots of cheaper options that are also great and fine and wonderful. I think that the Knitter's Pride, both the metal ones and the wooden ones are top-notch, and they're relatively inexpensive. In my humble opinion, those are the best ones. Now with my 16-inch circulars, I get the Chow-Goos, but for DPNs, I usually get the Knitter's Pride. And they have a bunch of different ones, and I like all of them. They're all really good. Maybe about a year ago, it was a little less than that because I was talking about the toys that I knit for last year's advent calendar. And so those all use US 3 DPNs. And so I bought a bunch of them and I weighed them and compared them and talked about those in depth. I don't like index my shows, and I really should because sometimes I can't remember what show I talked about what on. So anyway. My third comment is a secondhand comment because I have not flown to Europe in a really long time. Since I've been a knitter, I have not flown to Europe. But I have heard other knitters say that they've had their metal needles confiscated on international flights. If you have a comment about that, like if this has happened to you, please leave a comment for Linda so she can pack accordingly. I've never had it happen on a domestic flight, and I fly domestically, you know, relatively often enough that I've never had a problem. I don't think anybody's ever had a problem on a domestic flight that I know of, but international flights, sometimes wooden needles are okay, but metal are not. So please weigh in if you have a comment on that. Okay, Always Yarn First says, love seeing you, Devin. I cast on the Mazzoni vest by Lindsay Deegan last week, and I'm using your Shopiversary 50-gram set from last year. Oh my gosh, this is the cutest vest. It reminds me a ton of the Summer Vibe top that I just finished, except that it's more vesty and less toppy. Like it's got that kind of rolled over neck thing. I was looking a lot on Brooklyn Tweed's website, and then I looked up this vest, and I noticed that there is a trend lately. I assume it's lately. I just noticed it today. Maybe you can fill me in on it. On people wearing their hats on like the tippy top of their head. What is that? Like even if you have poofy hair, you can pull your hat down, you know, to keep your ears warm. Maybe because they take these pictures in the summer, they're like, I'll just barely put it on and it can just rest on top of my head, but I feel like it's gonna fall off. Is this like a thing? I don't know. It's weird. I'll talk about it more when I get to knitting fantasies, but, and again, here we have the architectural pants. I don't know. There are some trends I'm just not gonna get on board with, but you do you, girlfriend. Okay. Katie B says, catching up on last weekend's podcast after being out of town, and I hear my name. Oh, Katie B again. Katie Bell, Gryffindor Chaser. She says, Katie is the one who knit the tea cozy a few weeks ago. She said, I wish I had a favorite tea cozy pattern to share, but it's surprisingly hard to find a good, basic, classic tea cozy pattern. I have a lot of fun just making them up to fit individual teapots. I will send Devin pictures of my collection, including failures. So let me get over to my email. Katie says, I've been knitting just over 10 years, and I think my first tea cozy was pretty close to that long ago. The memories are hazy, but I first tried knitting one from a free basic pattern that was pretty bland. Knit 2 stockinette sides and then seam together. That is basic. And the results were underwhelming, saggy, baggy, and it did not fit my little teapot. The teapot I use on a daily basis is Bee House style from Japan and 24 ounce, which is a smaller size. Sadly, the company no longer makes Bee House teapots. So here are some of Katie's tea cozies. Katie is a real tea connoisseur. She must be to have so many teapots and cozies. She said, since I didn't really like that tea cozy and most of the patterns I looked up were way more complicated than my knitting skills were up to, I started experimenting from an idea in my head to knit tea cozies in the round for my teapots. I've had successes that I loved and failures that I learned from. Some very sad failures. All failures are sad. I know, it's a bummer because it's time wasted and yarn wasted, although you could undo it if you want. I've also knit a bunch of liners that go around the teapot under the tea cozy because the more layers of knitting / cozy, the better it keeps the tea warm. This one is a very colorful fail that's been sitting in the garage waiting for me to realize that it needs to be knit into something better. And she says that is now in progress. Over the years, I've knit dozens, slowly figuring out how to understand the shape of the knitting in relation to the shape of the teapot, so that now I tailor each cozy for the teapot it will adorn and play with the creativity of the design based off the yarn I am using. My tea cozies are still not crazy creative, no knitted cottages or anything like that, but cozies are my favorite, scrappy, the sky's the limit, creative blank canvas for playing with small amounts of yarn, generally leftover bits or samples, to create something pretty and functional. And if I need a quick knitting pick-me-up, I can finish a cozy in a day or two. I did make a lovely tea cozy that I really like from a free pattern from Lily Sugar and Cream Yarnspirations that just had you knit 2 garter squares and then seam them together at the sides, leaving holes for the handle and the spout. Then weave the yarn around the top and pull it tight to create the ruffly top effect. This is so cute. I used for the water lily cozy. Cue sad music. But I just went looking for that pattern to share and it's discontinued according to Ravelry and I couldn't find it on the Yarnspirations website. However, I'd be happy to share the pattern I have with anyone interested. I'm including photos here for illustrations. I went digging through my kitchen drawers and pulled out this pile of tea cozies that I keep for easy access to use every day for my morning pot of tea. Then I went looking in my garage and found a box full of cozies. Wow, you are just a tea cozy machine, Katie. Excuse me. I'll have to send more photos separately. In this pile is that first one I knit long ago, the saggy, baggy cozy. Although if I actually put it on the right size teapot, it doesn't look half bad. Wow, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. All right, moving right along to knitting fantasies. Both of my picks today come from the Brooklyn Tweed website. I was just poking around there today and I found some really, really beautiful patterns. Brooklyn Tweed has really great patterns, but they charge a lot for them. I did find a hat pattern I liked, one of these tippy top ones, for only $4. So that was nice. But this pattern that I'm about to share with you is $15. Wow. Not that I begrudge the designer for charging $15 because it's a lot of work to write a knitting pattern. It is way more work than it's worth. Unless you are Andrea Mowry or Caitlin Hunter or somebody who is popular enough that you can sell 1 million of them, it's very hard to make any money as a knitwear designer. So I don't begrudge them what they're asking for a pattern, but it is a lot compared to what other people are asking. So this first pick is called Burchette Cocoon Cardigan, and it is $15. This is a cocoon cardigan that I think is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It is a fingering. Oh, no, DK? I think it's DK weight. Hold on. Yeah, pretty sure it's DK. And as you can see here, you're gonna do a provisional cast on, and then you're gonna knit in both directions to create the body of the sweater. And then you're going to pick up for the sleeves and knit those out. So it doesn't look too hard. If that doesn't scare you, if provisional cast on and then knitting in both directions doesn't scare you, then it doesn't look that hard. I would totally knit this. I think it is just gorgeous. My second pick is called Maybeck, another $15 pattern. Now this is an interesting sweater because it's just a plain sweater with some honeycomb cabling down the front and on the sleeves. But it has this very interesting lacing that just takes it up 10 notches. Without that there, I definitely would not have clicked on this sweater. The lacing makes it so, so interesting. But then I thought, you could put that on anything. You could put that on whatever you wanted. I found another hat, and I didn't save a picture of it, but on Brooklyn Tweed's website, where it was just a plain ribbed hat, but across the ribs, they did like just a horizontal stitch of multicolors, and it just looks so cool. And I thought we should really be jazzing up our knits more. Now this one, Maybeck, I believe is a fingering weight. You can go, I have links down below to link to Brooklyn Tweed's website, and you can go over there and check these out if you want. But if you have a minute and you want to scroll through something just super cool, scroll through the patterns over at Brooklyn Tweed, because there are a lot of really, really interesting ones. Okay, moving right along to, so here's what happened. This story comes to me from one of my all-time favorite knitters and favorite human beings, my friend Rachel from Washington. Hi, Rachel. Rachel contributed my very first knitting story because I asked her to. And she very, very kindly obliged me. She even sent in a video back in the day. So again, I'm not sure what episode that was on. Probably one of the early ones in like the 40s maybe. So like 160 episodes ago, 140 episodes ago. But anyway, Rachel is a wonderful human being, and I love the story that she sent me. Thank you so much, Rachel, for sending me a knitting story. It would have been super embarrassing if I had showed up and been like, don't have any stories. So if you have a knitting story, send it to me. If it's heartbreaking, heartwarming, wonderful, terrible, any gambit, any place on the spectrum of emotions, please send it to me. This is our oral tradition. This is where we share our knitting stories and we keep the knitting alive. Many of us don't have family members or friends who knit. I don't. And so we all need to get together with each other and share our stories. So is that enough guilt for you to send me your knitting story? Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com, Devin with an I. Okay, Rachel said, so, hi knitters. She says, hi knitters. So here's what happened. Or continues to happen, or doesn't happen, depending on how you look at it. Let me explain. Last September, we brought home the most adorable little bundle of fur you have ever seen. He is a fluffy corgi named Momo, or Mo, as we usually call him. He was so snuggly and calm that we thought, yes, the perfect dog finally. We've had many other dogs over the years for the family, but now that we're mostly empty nesters, this one was for us. I had visions of sitting on the couch in the winter with my puppy snuggled up to me as I knit. It was a very vivid image in my head. One I thought for sure our gentle, well-behaved corgi would surely partake in. Well, we were in for a shock. This little terrorist chased everything, chewed everything, and really challenged our midlife bodies, if you know what I mean. We gradually allowed him greater freedom in the house, putting up things as necessary. They didn't have to go far because this little guy was rather low to the ground. In the living room, my knitting generally occupies half the couch, as one does. It varies in organization and quantity depending on what whips are interesting. I was accustomed to just setting my project down and leaving it on a large tray that sits on the couch. Very handy, that tray. Less lost stitch markers. Anyway, you can probably see where this is going. One day, I returned from outside to find my husband in the middle of discovering Mo with a multicolor, multi-skein project on circular needles all over the floor. Mo had somehow snagged the project off the couch and had been having a ball with all that yarn and those needles. Brian scooped up the dog and I scooped up the massive yarn barf and needles. Oh, I do wish I had taken a picture. It was everywhere. Yarn in tatters, project ruined. My wood needles were chomped down to the metal. Mo was already removed from the situation, so our teaching moment with him was lost. But I had no idea how he would react to my flood of tears. As I sorted the yarn and surveyed the damage, I cried. Mo sat at my feet watching as I put to rights his chaos. It took quite a while, and he stayed the whole time. I forgave the little bugger. He was, after all, just being a puppy, and the fault was mine for not zipping my project securely away in my bag. But that tearful afternoon made an impression on him. Time has moved on for Mo and me. He is now a year old and a much better behaved corgi. He's so much fun to train and play with. I no longer worry what shoe, rug, grandkid toy, garbage item, stick, rock, plushie, wash rag, towel, napkin, or doorstop he will chew up. Did you know that corgis will destroy anything? He loves us and we love him. He's got free run of the house and is welcome on the couch where he frequently settles down for snuggles. My knitting still resides on the couch in its tray, but it has not been touched by him since that day. Daily, we'll sit companionably next to each other, and after a bit, I'll pick up my knitting. He'll side-eye me and jump down. If I set the project down, he'll jump back up, sigh, and settle down. If I ever so slowly pick up my knitting, off he goes. If I tell him to stay next to me, he'll scoot a bit away, turn his head, but not settle down. I can place yarn, my project bag, or needles next to him and get zero reaction. He's curious about them, but okay with them being there. It's only when I pick up a project and start knitting that Mo decides he is not needed at the present. No puppy snuggles with me knitting. Maybe someday we'll get back to the plan of gentle, quiet nights with my puppy and my knitting, but for now, Mo chooses not to rock the boat and stays away from that knitting. Maybe it's a lesson in boundaries. Maybe a lesson in respecting others' things. Maybe it's a lesson in don't do the thing that made Mom cry all afternoon. I think it's all three. But for now, he gives me my space to focus on knitting, and then when I'm not knitting, it's his turn. It's about an equal split right now. Knit on, everyone, and hug your puppy for me, Rachel Tuck. Awesome, Rachel. I love that story. My dog, Rocky, really is the best dog in the world. He's blind, and he never does anything wrong. And granted, he had a few moments like Mo's, nothing with knitting. But he eviscerated one of Charlotte's toys. And I sewed it back together, but that was one of the only things. And that was just like Mo when he was a little puppy. And, we just need to keep Charlotte's door closed because she's got stuffed animals. But yeah, I love dogs. They're so great. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day of knitting, and I will see you back here next week. Bye, knitters.